Hello and welcome to our second teach-in today, and this is on family leave and peacemaking. I'm Timothy Watchering, he, him, his, and I'm the moderator of the General Assembly Committee for Presbyterian Peace Fellowship. And so I will now pass it on to Reverend Bethany.
Hi, friends. My name is Reverend Bethany Benz-Whittington. I have been one of the organizers for family leave policy in the denomination for about 4 years now, and was invited by Presbyterian Peace Fellowship to talk about that, particularly in the midst of the General Assembly happening right now, but also as a time in our culture when we are discovering all of the many ways that this issue intersects with everything in this country. And so I have invited a couple of very special friends to join us. Oh, special friends, it sounds it sounds silly, but some very dear friends to join us in this conversation today. And so I would ask them to introduce themselves to you, and then we will jump right into the meat of the issue. Hailey, why don't you start?
Sure. My name is Reverend Hailey Malcom. I was a member of the Family Leave Task Force appointed by the 223rd General Assembly. So I've spent since September, so many months now, looking at this issue, studying it, figuring out the best way for us to move forward as a denomination. And that's how I got involved. Contina?
Hello, my name is Contina Lundy, and I am a ruling elder from Philadelphia. I am the co-moderator of the Family Leave Task Force. I am a program director. I work with kids and families, and I was appointed by the 223rd General Assembly, and I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you both. So as we get started together today, I want to offer a few guiding questions that will kind of help us think through this issue of family leave. And so either in the Facebook comments or with whomever you're sitting with currently, think about these couple of, I want you to think about these couple of questions and how, how this issue has either affected your life or the life of someone you know and love, perhaps the pastor of your church, or you are the pastor. So here we go. The first is, have you ever been affected by family leave or a lack thereof? And we will come back to that that phrase family leave, and I want you to just take note that it's family leave and not parental leave, and we'll talk about why that is in a bit. The next question is, what are the biggest reasons for taking family leave? So why might one need to take family leave? And here's one that we may need to dig into a bit. What do you think is an ideal amount of time? In Canada, they get 9 months to a year, so that's great for Canada. And finally, what do you see as the obstacles to a longer leave? And so take some time as we're talking through these things to hold these questions in your mind and listen as we answer them. And if we get to the end and we haven't answered them, feel free to bring them back up so that we can. We want to cover as much as we can in a short amount of time. So please hold us to some of these questions. And so to get to the meat of the issue, I'm going to turn it over to Hailey to talk a little bit about where we are currently, and then all three of us will tell you specifically how it is that we got involved in this issue. So Hailey, tell us where we are currently.
Hello. So where we are currently is that the Family Leave Task Force appointed by the 223rd General Assembly created a report and recommendation on this issue. And you can find it on PC Biz. But basically, it recommends that we amend the section of the Book of Order that talks about minimum terms of call for ministers of word and sacrament, to say that our call should include provision for 12 weeks paid family medical leave, in addition to participation in the Board of Pensions and all those other things that are already in there. It also recommends that we define family leave as including but not limited to the following: leave following the birth of or adoption of a child, leave to provide care for an ill or disabled family member, and leave to heal following a loss or tragic event. And then there's also a recommendation to approve a sample policy, which we included in our item. So our sample policy, one of the things that we really wanted to be aware of as we worked as a task force was how this was connected with equality. And so our sample policy includes all employees of a PCUSA entity or church or whatever. Knowing that we can't amend the Constitution to protect all church workers, we still wanted to put that recommendation in there that it should apply to everyone. Right now, this item has been referred to the 225th General Assembly in 2022, but there has been a movement to reconsider the item that had that referral list. So there is still a possibility that that item could be amended and family leave could be pulled off the referral list to be discussed at this General Assembly. So that's where we are now.
So I would like for the three of us particularly, and Timothy, if you have any connection to family leave or are passionate about it, please feel free to chime in. We would love to hear your perspective as well. But myself and Hailey and Contina particularly, the question is, how is it that we got involved in this particular issue? And so Contina, would you start by telling us what it was that made you feel called to apply for the task force and to accept the post as co-moderator?
I don't know exactly about being called, but at first I didn't know exactly what I could bring to the conversation because, one, I am not a parent, I am not a mother or anything like that, but I do work with parents and I am an advocate for children and I want the best life for a child. So once I got more information and just like listening to different conversations, I realized that I did have something to give. I could be a voice for the people that really do a lot of work and never get a chance to talk about their emotions about when they get pregnant. And the first thing my friends, the people that look like me, their mind was, they couldn't enjoy being pregnant. They had to worry about, well, how long will I be off from work? Is there someone that could watch my child? Am I still going to get paid? Those kind of issues came to the forefront, and I decided that I needed to at least be at the table to be that voice to make sure that they didn't fall to the wayside in this conversation.
And Hailey, what was it for you that called you to be on the task force?
Sure. So I started my career in ministry in pediatric chaplaincy. So I worked with kids and their families who were very sick. And I saw a lot of parents of all kinds have to not be able to fully worry about their child because they were also worrying about work situations, not being able to take off the time to be with their kids. And it really it just added stressor upon stressor upon stressor, money, work, ability to hold a job, that kind of thing. And I also noticed that it was disproportionate to race, that people of color had a disproportionate need for leave from work that they were not getting. And so that's one of the things that called me to this task force.
And for me, many of you are watching, most of you, all of you are watching on Facebook right now and likely know about all of the different Presbyterian Facebook groups that there are. And one of them is a Young PCUSA Leaders Group. And there was a woman 4-ish years ago who came into that group and to ask a question about going on maternity leave, because she was pregnant at the time. And she told us the follow-up from that was that her session had granted her 2 weeks of maternity leave. And because there's no standard across the board of what we should do. And so in a lot of places, it's very much every pastor, every church worker, every staff member for themselves. And there was a bit of an outrage over that. And we built a group that started talking about how we can create a just and equal system of family leave across the denomination. And one of the things that I have learned in these last 4 years is that this issue crosses all of our isms. It deals in racism, in sexism, in ageism. It goes to homophobia and transphobia and xenophobia and ableism. Any of the isms and phobias that you can think of, family leave has some connection to it. Oh, I forgot classism especially. So it started as a passion for this one particular colleague who I thought that's unfair. They need to do better by her, and has grown into this passion that crosses all the boundaries. So at this point, it's more than just a passion. It's a project out of love. And so I'm really hopeful for this General Assembly, especially as we dive into issues particularly concerning racism and the COVID-19 pandemic, that this is urgent. This is not something that I think can be kicked down the road another 2 or 3 years. This is urgent. It's happening now. Your pastors and your church staff are going to have to care for parents. They're going to have to care for children born during a pandemic and children who get ill. So a lot of where my passion comes from is caring for other people, especially in a time such as this. And speaking of such a time as this, each of us wants to share with you some of our biblical theological reflections on why this particular issue, the issue of family leave, is so important and is so relevant not only to now but across time, and that as God continues to speak in our lives, that God speaks to this issue as well. So Hailey, if you would get us started to tell us a little bit of your biblical theological perspective on this.
Sure. So one of the main things that we believe in Presbyterians is that we believe in the Trinity, right? Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, 1 and 3, 3 and 1. And that in itself is a relational thing. We use a big seminary word, it's perichoresis, which just means that all of the members of the Trinity sort of mutually indwell with one another. And so God is inherently a relational being, even God's self. And we think of creation as sort of an outpouring of that love and want for relationship. So God wants to be in relationship with creation, which means in relationship with us. And it means that God wants us to be in relationship with creation, which means one another. And family units are obviously a really important part of that concept. We want to be able to raise children who believe in relationships, who are secure in their attachments and all of those things, and being able to spend time with them after they're born in particular is very important. I am also a social worker and have studied some psychology and things like that. And attachment disorders in children they have ramifications for the rest of their lives. And so being able to form those secure attachments early on is so important. And then as we look at aging and all of those things, being able to feel secure that you have someone who might be able to take care of you if you were sick, is important to our mental health and spiritual well-being as well.
And Contina is going to bring us a story from, are you going to talk about Esther?
I am. Esther really speaks to me because of the fact that she was willing to speak for the people. And that kind of goes in line with my story of how I became a part of the task force, because I really didn't feel as though I had anything to give, but God used a Mordecai in my life to tap me on the shoulder and say, Contina, you need to be a part of this conversation. You need to make people aware that this conversation of privilege needs to be on the, like, just a justice issue, that people that don't look like the people that are talking about this issue are the main ones missing out on things. And first I was really scared, kind of like Esther, didn't want to do it. Like, could you pick someone else? I'm not the one that you want to send. But finally I listened, and God gave me the words. He gave me a great group of people to work with, and we came up with a great recommendation for General Assembly.
Agreed. And of course, I am grateful to these two colleagues who, when we were planning this and I said, let's talk about biblical theological connections, the things that came to my head were birthing women, and both of them brought different theological biblical perspectives, and which is a big part of the reason why we do this in community, right? It's a big part of the reason that we need our community. We need our community to support us and to help us think through these larger issues. And family leave, a just family leave, supports the community. It's a way of saying we believe in family. We believe in all of the aunts and uncles and siblings that lift us up throughout our lifetimes. So the biblical story that I often come back to is the story of Hannah, and she is the mother of Samuel. And much of my connection to Hannah is around the issue of fertility. And I have shared in many places over the years about my own struggles with fertility, and how family leave has kind of been something I never really expected to take as a young woman who could not have a child. And so Hannah has always spoken to me in that way. And so when Samuel does come, there's this joyful cry that she gives, and she promises that that child will be a servant of God. And Hailey talked about the relationship of the Trinity, and that's what we are. That's what that relationship between Hannah and Samuel and God is. It's all about being in relationship, caring for one another, being servants of one another. So, and all of these stories and theological perspectives that we are lifting up right now, it's only the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more in the biblical narrative about the community of faith, the community that cares for one another, that raises a village instead of an individual. So one of the big issues that Presbyterian Peace Fellowship is responding to right now is the pandemic of racism. And so the big question for particularly the topic of family leave is, how does this topic at a grassroots level help to dismantle white supremacy? And as I mentioned, we have talked about how this crosses and touches on all of our isms. So we want to flesh that out a bit more. So I've asked Contina to share with us a little bit about her work advocating for families and children and how this issue crosses into that. So Contina, if you would.
Okay, so when just discussing with some of the families and just women in my circle, many topics came up, and one that really struck me was a teacher in Philadelphia who was taking care of her mother, and her mother was going through a whole lot. She had to transfer her from from a hospital to a nursing home, and then to hear from her principal that she couldn't take any more time, that she had exhausted all her time. And I think it was like 6 weeks that she took. It really hurt me. Like I couldn't believe it. And then on top of that, she wanted to take some family leave time just for like the personal kind of stuff. Because once you give to everyone else, then when do you have time to make sure that you're okay? And she's teaching young people every day. And for this to be in the forefront of her mind, that while she's teaching, oh, I can't have a breakdown, because if I have a breakdown, I might lose my job, or I may not have it, or I may just lose everything. I don't have any funds to take care of my mother. It was so many things that made me have pause, just to say, is this really what's going on in America? Is this really the conversation that's going on, that people can't take care of their older parents? And if they do take care of them, and in the midst of dealing with that, your supervisor is coming to you saying, well, you can't take any more time because you exhausted everything. It brought tears to my eyes to hear young people talk about raising families and wanting to bring another human into this world, and they're more concerned about the time that they have to do the necessary things to be a healthy human being, to bring a healthy human being in. But in the back of their mind, they're worried about how much time they have off. And well, do I have this person that can watch my child? And if that person can't watch my child, who else can I get? Who else can I call? And they are starting week one trying to get a list together to make sure that they can, because they can't miss any time from work, because it's a slight chance that their job will not be there when they're ready to come back. These are the kind of conversations that led me to be a part of the task force. It is my hope that that what I shared encourages other people to become a part of the conversation. Not to say that you know more or anything like that, but to say that you are willing to be a person that stands up for everybody, to make sure everyone has an equal stance in family leave, not just the people that look like you. I believe that this is a justice issue that we need to grab hold of and run with it, because everyone deserves a chance to enjoy the joy of bringing a baby home without worrying about their job, or the joy of just saying, I did something for my parent and now I could take 2 weeks to get myself together so I can serve the greater good.
Thank you. From a purely academic standpoint, when it comes to the intersection of family leave and racism, many of us know, if not all of us, the statistics on Black maternal care. And maybe not the exact numbers, but we know that it's not as good as it should be. We know that the death rate of Black women in childbirth is far, far higher than it is for any other people group. In addition to Black neonatal care, and the ways that our white supremacist systems have created systemic poverty over the centuries, so that caring for an elder parent falls on the shoulders of children. And so building wealth is difficult. Building wealth is impossible. And so this is a lifetime issue for people groups, particularly who have been minoritized in this country and across the world. And so as we are dealing, I hope more effectively today with the pandemic of racism, holding these things in our hearts and holding in tension with one another, that it's, you've seen it, it's not a pie, right? Just because you get more of the pie doesn't mean I get less. It's not a pie. The only way for there to be true freedom is for all of us to be free. And so over time, building the ability to build wealth, the ability to care for our parents and our children, it absolutely lends itself to a better life, a longer life. And so finally, as we kind of start to wrap up, particularly with these questions about the systems that we perpetuate, right? We have a couple of practical steps for action, practical things that we can all do wherever we are. So the first, and this has been touched on already, the first thing is the action item at the General Assembly that has been moved to be reconsidered. It has in it the Family Leave Task Force. And our hope, my hope especially, is that that commissioners will see this as an urgent issue that is directly applicable to both the pandemic of racism and the COVID-19 pandemic. And for this General Assembly to take that up. And that's, you know, me personally saying that. So I hope that you can hear that. But you know, the reason that I bring that up is because there is an urgency about this. You know, another 2 to 3 years waiting for people to have a just family leave. And I will just mention that the federal government now offers 12 weeks of paid leave. Just in the last, I think, year and a half that has happened. And so if the federal government can do it, can't we all? So a couple of other things. I come from the organizing group who wrote the overture on family leave. And we are really, really excited about the work that the task force did, because, and kudos to both of you, Hailey and Contina, and everyone on the task force, because the task force recommendation is far, far more inclusive than we were able to be. And so I am so grateful for that. It is about teaching elders in installed ministry, which is what we were able to do with the overture. But they also found a way to work in all church staff, Presbyterian entities. And so we're really hopeful that the task force is not only thanked at this General Assembly, but is also that their work is taken up and taken seriously. One of the questions that comes up frequently is, how are we going to pay for this? And a phrase that I really try hard not to use ever, but I wind up using it with more frequency than I should, is the term unfunded mandate. And what that means is, it basically means I don't know the answer to that question. And I'll let Contina and Hailey speak to this as well, because they did have a little tiny bit of discussion about it on the task force. But my hope is for some sort of, Presbytery synod support, pulpit supply, those kinds of things. Presbyterian leaders can jump in if a pastor has to be away, and we should in our work lives be supporting one another in our jobs as well. So as we talk about staff taking leave, splitting up those kinds of duties, encouraging elders to step forward and teach and preach. We believe in the priesthood of all believers, and so ruling elders, get up behind the pulpit and do some preaching. Hailey, Contina, do y'all have anything to add to that?
I think you hit most of our points. We unfortunately didn't have the time that we had hoped for as a task force to really nail down, this is how it's going to be funded. And so our hope is that rather than mandating funding from some one place, that churches and presbyteries and synods will be collaborative and creative in figuring out how to support individual entities on this issue. And I also think that by making it, or by having a policy and making it known that this is what people get in terms of family leave, that helps us in terms of planning. Because if I know I might have to give this pastor 12 or this church worker 12 weeks paid family leave at any time, family members get sick really quickly and you never know, then there's an ability to plan for that. So I know my presbytery has a small church fund where this kind of thing might be funded, and maybe other people can get on that board as well.
Yeah, I think with the whole Matthew 25 initiative, and just we could be the presence of starting this conversation and being very mindful that another church may need our help. And I think this is really calling churches to come together, to have discussion, to do ministry together. Like Hailey said, that we are relational people and that we need to demonstrate that to the world. And perhaps if we start here, then it will break down some other things that we see going on that the world can't answer.
Amen. It's all about relationships, right? So outside of the General Assembly work, there are other things that we can do. The first is that you can go to your COM or whatever presbytery entity does this kind of work and put their feet to the fire. One of my notes that I have right here, it says, don't take no for an answer. And so don't take no for an answer. This is too important. And it's all about being in a relationship with one another. And if we're going to do that, then we can't just simply hear no and walk away. So my encouragement to you is people will say no, and don't hear that. Hear it as yes is down the road. We just have to figure out how to get to it. So get to work on your COMs, on your minimum terms of call in your own presbyteries. And we are available to you. There is a large group of people who have been working on this for a good long time. And we are not experts by any means, but we know a lot of stuff. And we've been doing it from a biblical theological perspective for a long time. And so I am concerned about my congregation and my presbytery, but I'm concerned about you and yours as well. And I don't want to speak for Hailey and Contina, but I think that they would agree with me that this is about all of us. And so our hope is to spread this care what we can do is spread this care to the denomination. But there's no reason that that we can't be one of the leaders on this. I think we all desire for the church to lead instead of follow, to be in the world, but not of the world, as we like to say. And so let's do that. Let's be leaders on this and take our cues from the relationship that God wants us to be in. So, Timothy, I am done. Hailey or Contina, if there is anything that you want to add, please do.
I just wanted to say that whenever I hear someone say, oh, that person's going to tell me no, then you keep going until you get to a person that can tell you yes. Just keep going. No's are always going to come up or whatever. And that's how you know. My grandmother always said that you don't know that you're doing the right thing until the devil shows up. And that no is the devil showing up. So you keep going until you get a yes from someone who could give you a yes. Because a lot of times that person telling you no is just scared to do the work. So you keep pushing.
I would echo those sentiments as well. A lot of times, no just means I don't know how right now, but we can figure out a way to help people get there. And I also just want to say thank you to all of the people who are keeping this issue in mind and helping us make it important.
Totally. Especially to all the people that did the work before us, that really laid the groundwork where we didn't have to do much, just, have a conversation around it. We got a lot of stuff from the other people who did the groundwork for us. So I totally appreciate everyone.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. And we will end here.